In case you haven't heard, the entertainment industry as we know it is about to draw its final breath, as Warner Bros. Discovery is currently caught in a bidding war between Netflix and Paramount. Now I know that sounds dramatic, but regardless of who's walking away with custody of the Warner Brothers and their little sister Dot, we're crossing a point of no return when it comes to streaming, cable, and theaters. With this topic blowing up the news and living in my head rent-free, I wanted to dive into the concerns around Netflix and Paramount owning Warner Bros. Discovery. As I know people may be wondering, who's the lesser of two evils? What's the best outcome, if any at all? Let's talk about it, starting with Netflix. So I won't lie, while this is definitely a lose-lose scenario where no matter who's victorious, employees and consumers are going to get screwed over either way, Netflix acquiring Warner Bros. Discovery terrifies me way more than Paramount personally, as it could easily result in the death of movie theaters. With Netflix co-CEO Ted Sarandos stating earlier this year that he believes dwindling box office numbers are a sign that moviegoers prefer streaming over the cinema.
Netflix is a very consumer-focused company. We really do care that we deliver the programming to you in a way you want to watch it. What is the consumer trying to tell us? Right. That they'd like to watch movies at home, thank you. And the studios and the theaters are duking it out over trying to preserve this 45-day window that is completely out of step with the consumer experience of just loving a movie.
Notice how he always says consumer and never just the people? We're nothing more than dollar signs to this fucker. Obviously, the head of a tech company would want us to believe that their service is more optimal than a trip to the theater. But these last couple of years have proven that this sentiment is false. Sure, we aren't seeing flicks put up 2019 numbers in the box office, but we have seen theaters find a new groove and draw large crowds with not only original films, but re-releases, anime events, and even premiere episodes of beloved television shows hitting the big screen. Over the last year, I've been in packed theaters for Spider-Man, Don, Toy Story, Shin Godzilla, and Perfect Blue, just to name a few outings. You also have movies like Oppenheimer and Sinners creating a larger demand for 70mm IMAX screenings. Sinners has been put back into IMAX like 3 times now, raking in the dough on every single occasion. And the movie just came out earlier this year. Heading to streaming didn't deter people from wanting to watch it over and over again on the biggest screen possible, with the best sound possible. In a time where we're losing third places to exist in outside of home and work, with those two becoming the same place in the age of remote employment, people are recognizing the value of getting immersed in another world for a couple of hours, surrounded by those who love both the medium and the communal experience. Contrary to Teddy's delusional beliefs, you wouldn't have had Barbenheimer at home. What? Were people going to pick the largest apartment in their friend group to show up in pink suits at, so they could half watch these two movies on a 40-inch TV while doom scrolling? No! Theaters are how you motivate people to wake up at the crack of dawn, souped up on caffeine in the name of cinema, in order to give their undivided attention to these works of art. Theaters are how you get anime fans decked out in cosplay, bonding with one another as they get to watch their favorite characters on the big screen. An experience they don't get to have firing up episodes on Crunchyroll every week. They're how you get parents bringing their kids to the theaters to share their beloved childhood movies with them without worrying about their kid getting distracted. While I adore streaming and the ability to binge the 6 season dramas I missed out on growing up, it's not something that should dethrone theaters in the same way that it dethroned cable. And while Sarandos has denied that's the intention, it very clearly is. Sarandos stated, "We've released about 30 films into theaters this year, so it's not like we have this opposition to movies in theaters. My pushback has been mostly in the fact of the long exclusive windows, which we don't really think are that consumer friendly. I think over time, the windows will evolve to be much more consumer friendly, to meet the audience where they are, all of those things we'd like to do." Alright, so first off, his mention that Netflix released 30 films into theaters this year is disingenuous to put it lightly. When you hear that, you're gonna think, oh, they gave 30 movies widespread releases that anyone had access to so long as they were nearby a movie theater? When in reality, a lot of these films have extremely limited releases at independently owned theaters, which aren't marketed all that well because, well, they want people to tune into these films on their platform. And they only have these limited releases so that they're eligible for award season. If you're not a cinema connoisseur living in New York or LA who's in the loop of all these films, or if you didn't catch these flicks at a film festival, then you're only gonna see them when they're available at home. Earlier this year, I saw K-pop Demon Hunters at a local theater before it massively blew up and got a couple more widespread releases. And I only knew it was in theaters because one of my friends looked into it. Netflix gave zero indication that this joint was playing. Surroundos can act like Netflix fully embraces the movie-going experience and make statements that look good on paper to the average Joe who's worried about the future of theaters. But when you look into it, his reassurance feels pretty hollow. Especially when big theater chains like AMC and Regal haven't seen eye to eye with Netflix and have boycotted the company to an extent, as they don't want to play ball with the streaming service unless they can host their films for a normal length of time.
I don't want to be a foe of Netflix. Netflix is a great company. I would love to play Netflix movies in our theaters, but hence going back to principles and this past weekend and K-pop, we need a respectable theatrical window, because if I do something for Netflix, a 2-week window or something, how do I say to Disney or Warner Brothers or Sony or Paramount, oh, yeah, but for you, it's 45 days. It's just not right.
This was evident with the first K-pop Demon Hunter sing-along run skipping AMC, and while it seems like both parties are trying to play along, with AMC being a host of K-pop's second sing-along run and the upcoming series finale of Stranger Things, it still feels like there's a reluctance on both sides. I live in LA, where screenings for the Stranger Things finale should be in abundance, yet any AMC near me that is playing it on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day only has one showing each, both of them selling out in no time flat, and that seems to be the vibe for most chains hosting it. An event of this caliber should have at least a few showings to properly accommodate the massive amount of fans who would love to experience the end as a community. It'd certainly be easy money for both the chains and Netflix. Yet we're getting the bare minimum. The new Knives Out film, Wake Up Dead Man, and Del Toro's Frankenstein were also denied releases at AMC and Regal. And I don't know, while we have the AMC CEO himself stating that release windows are important to them, you gotta start to wonder how much of this comes down to Netflix being a stinker. Especially when Glass Onion, the previous Knives Out film, was shown at AMC for 2 weeks. Clearly they're willing to compromise on the small window. This is where Netflix acquiring Warner Bros. Discovery feels like a death sentence for theaters. It's mutually assured destruction. All it takes is for one party to decide, nope, not having this movie play at this chain, for things to go south quickly. Not having a Netflix original playing in big theater chains is one thing, but potentially having WB's entire slate omitted is another. That's the worst case scenario. And thankfully, companies like IMAX have issued reassurance that contracts to run certain films in theaters will be honored regardless of who owns WBD. But it's still not an impossibility, especially for the films that aren't bound by those deals. Still, a major studio losing a major theater chain means less traffic for that chain and a smaller box office gross for that studio. Everyone's pockets suffer, which is the innate flaw in Netflix's lust for smaller release windows. Individual films aren't going to be profitable on their services because the profit boils down to the subscription fee. And they've been scratching their heads over ways to make more money before, always falling back on price hikes.
If only there was a way for them to make more money. I don't know, get their fans to watch their stuff. Maybe in a different setting that they can't normally get at home. Maybe a movie theater! When films that cost hundreds of millions of dollars only make a fraction of that back because they only had 2 weeks in theaters, with the weekends and discount Tuesdays being the only days where they can make some serious cheddar, it's just going to lead to less films being made and an even heavier reliance on recognizable IP to draw people in. It really feels like they only care about this acquisition because they're enchanted with the idea of getting new releases up on their service as soon as possible. The very thing that caused Disney to lose momentum in the box office, as people became conditioned to waiting a couple of months to watch their next release instead of showing up to the theater, especially for Pixar. This kind of appeal also didn't work out for HBO Max, who hosted new films the same day they hit theaters. It affected the box office and still didn't make their service all too profitable in the long run. The only thing this type of strategy really accomplishes is making piracy easier and cooler to look at. Suffice to say, this acquisition would be pretty bleak for theaters. But what about streaming itself? Well, HBO Max is doomed, but that shouldn't be a shock. It's a competitive streamer, and we've already seen from Disney Plus and Hulu that a buyer has no qualms absorbing a quality streaming service into their own, even if we detest it. The people giving them our hard-earned money, as Disney is shutting down Hulu next year, with the service living on through a hub on Disney Plus, despite Hulu having the superior interface and catalog.
No matter who owns Warner Bros. Discovery, Max's best days are probably already behind us. So enjoy any Max originals while you can, because I doubt most of them will survive the next merger. And if you're thinking that this merger could at least be a net positive for animation, don't bet on it! Animation's equally as cooked as everything else. Netflix has already proven that they can't manage their own animated division. Remember when they scooped up a bunch of creatives to work at Netflix's own animation studio? I wonder what became of them! Cartoon Network already has a dead channel with most of the brand's new offerings consisting of popular IP and adaptations, so I don't see much changing there. Though I do fear for projects like Batman Caped Crusader and Steven Universe Lars of the Stars that are being produced for Prime Video, a competitive streamer. I think those shows would still be made, especially since Netflix wouldn't own Warner Bros. Discovery till next year, but I would hate to see those shows end prematurely, and for Lars of the Stars to be a one and done. But it's Adult Swim that I'm really worried about. If Netflix acquires WBD, then the channels will be spun off to whoever buys them, which makes me worried that the Adult Swim brand as a whole could be screwed. They've managed to hold down the fort when it comes to offering a solid variety of animated series. Yet the success of those series is partially measured by their viewership on HBO Max, with its next day streaming release. We don't know how Netflix would adapt to all of this, or if they would bother at all. They could add shows as they air on TV like Max does, or they could just wait until the entire season has aired to make all the episodes available on their platform, encouraging viewers to binge the whole thing. Spoiler alert, it's Netflix. Obviously they would do the latter, though that would lessen the odds of these shows scoring a renewal, unless they were performing incredibly well. Good or solid numbers aren't enough. It's go big or go home with these guys. With animation in particular, we just saw this unfold last year with Fairly Odd Parents: A New Wish. The entire season aired on TV, the team behind the show is informed that a renewal hinged on Netflix viewership, and despite both drops performing well, landing a spot in the kids' top 10, we haven't heard a peep about the show's future. It's just assumed to be canceled. Speaking of assumptions, a lot of people seem to believe that if Netflix owned WBD, then they'd feature more of their catalog for longer periods of time, instead of titles coming and going every other month. But that's simply not the case. Just because a company owns a show or film doesn't mean they can host it on their service free of charge. They still have to license it and pay themselves, which is why HBO Max pulled so many titles over the years that Warner themselves own. Tell me, how much money do you think Netflix is willing to spend after dropping $83 billion on this? While we'll certainly see newer WB titles in the rotation, I doubt they'd last any longer than they currently do before going ghost for a season. And I'm seeing people say, ooh, this could save Infinity Train. Ooh, we could finally get all the cartoons on Netflix. Wouldn't that be cool, guys? Nigga, HBO Max didn't host all the programming from Adult Swim, Cartoon Network, and other hits produced by WB. What makes you think Netflix is gonna do any better? And in case this came on autoplay and you're listening in another tab, look at my avatar! I am black! Look at it! Look at it! Look at it! I wouldn't have too much hope for shows to get a second chance at life from this, as Netflix already acquired some Max originals in the past, like Scavenger Train, which of course could have been picked up for a season 2 if it did well on there, but same old story. It didn't really make any waves thanks to Netflix method of promotion, and now it's just collecting dust on there, as another title someone may or may not give a shot amongst a sea of other shows, with no nudge from the service itself to give it a chance. Again, Netflix only seems interested in this purchase for the pre-established big names like DC, Lord of the Rings, Rick and Morty, huge HBO shows, etc. The hope that this could lead to more original content is wishful thinking to say the least. And if you're wondering if Netflix could help WB Games, I know they're not exactly in tip-top shape, but tell me, have you ever in your life had the urge to fuck with Netflix games? Did you even remember that they have a games division? Didn't think so, bud. Have fun streaming Hogwarts Legacy on your TV with the Roku app as your controller.
Our phones are awesome.
I don't have nearly as much to say when it comes to Paramount buying Warner Bros. Discovery, at least not without repeating myself, but that doesn't mean their acquisition wouldn't be equally as disastrous. It definitely would, just in different ways. The first thing that comes to mind is that Paramount is way more trigger happy with layoffs than Netflix, though they definitely aren't saints either. But it feels like every other month, Paramount's firing literal thousands of people. It also feels like this could easily become a repeat of the Disney and Fox merger, where Disney spent billions and acquired a company that wasn't doing that great prior to their acquisition, only to not do anything all that notable with their library beyond Avatar sequels, Fortnite collabs, and the X-Men carrying public interest for the MCU on their backs. I think most people people don't even know that 20th Century is still active and releasing movies to this day. I think all the average person knows is that they were bought by Disney 8 years ago, and now Professor Xavier could team up with Russian Hopper. This is the kind of fate that I could see happening with Warner Bros. As a studio. The big brands will continue to prosper, but aside from those who are younger or are super engaged with those brands, people may view their continued existence as an extension of Paramount's greed, while original, riskier ideas fall to the wayside. When it comes to streaming, while I did say I could see Netflix absorbing HBO Max with time, I actually wouldn't be surprised if Paramount decided to combine Paramount Plus and HBO Max into an entirely new service, or just force more Paramount content onto HBO Max like Discovery did, as I think they know people prefer Max over Paramount's streaming service. Now, the biggest reasons for concern when it comes to Paramount's acquisition of Warner Bros. Discovery are more political. Paramount is backed by Saudi Arabia and has a tendency to kiss Trump's ass. And unless you're someone like Matt and Trey, who moved a $1.5 billion chess piece that allows them to rip on the president, Saudi Arabia, and just about anyone without fear of censorship, it's easy to see how this could get messy fast. Unlike Netflix, Paramount's acquisition would mean they would inherit all of the TV channels, which in the grand scheme of things doesn't mean much for most channels on cable as they're dead zones anyway, but it would be terrible news for the likes of CNN, which Trump is demanding to be included in the sale of any deal with Warner Bros. Discovery, regardless of who buys them. The last thing we need is state-controlled media or anything that's adjacent to the like. Yet it definitely feels like Paramount has been heading in that direction, and handing them a news network that's been critical of the president would only make those matters worse, as everything owned by WBD could be just as easily influenced by the whims of the president and whoever else is giving Paramount an assload of money. Of course, it's not impossible for Netflix to go down a similar path. Paramount's just the one with an established track record.
God, I do not want to say climate change on this show. I don't know which way Zaslav voted.
So I guess at the end of the day, neither of these bozos should buy Warner Bros. Discovery. Both options seem pretty dire, and what's the point of selling to a competitor in the first place? Other than sheer desperation, or Zaslav himself being checked out, no longer wanting to deal with all of Warner's debt, and looking for his next payday. But hey, these are just my thoughts and I want to hear yours. Maybe you've worked out which company is the lesser evil in this situation, and you're free to sound off in the comments below. But remember, if the 2020s has taught us anything, it's that mergers are bad for everyone.